Most of us have at least one circumstance in our lives at any given point that isn't going the way we had hoped. Well, today I'm sharing a personal story of climbing a mountain at high elevation. Together, we're going to look at this literally and metaphorically. I'm Jem Fadling, and it's time for I Can Do That. Before we continue, would you do me a favor and share this episode or this podcast with a friend? I'd love to be able to encourage more women, and who better to encourage than the women in your own life? So it also helps if you rate and review this podcast, and these are little moves. They help this podcast, like mine, to be found and to grow. Thanks so much for your help. This past summer, we were in Mammoth Lakes, California, enjoying a week with some longtime friends. According to our friend Doug, who had been visiting Mammoth for decades, it was a beautifully unique time. Mammoth had received 60 feet of snow over the winter, and some of the roads into the area were still closed in July. And because of this, the lake levels were high, sometimes up to the road, and the waterfalls and cascades were uproariously gushing. There was so much beauty. One of the days, we hiked up to Crystal Lake, which sits at about 9,600 feet in elevation. Our trailhead began at about 9,100 feet, and we were assured by our friends that there were switchbacks and that it was difficult but a completely doable trail. Now, unfortunately, on our way up the hill, we discovered that there were patches of snow that cut each switchback in half, and this meant that we essentially had to climb straight uphill the whole time. And because of my ignorance at the time of our elevation and the vertical nature of what we were about to embark, I began the hike happy and energetic. But it didn't take too long before we began to feel the ramifications of both the elevation, which meant a lack of oxygen, and the absence of the switchbacks. Now, one of our friends, again, Doug, who has been taking his cardiovascular health very seriously, he was in great shape, and he was like a little kid, easily traversing the rocks, the tree roots, and the elevation. Now, the other four of us didn't quite have as much stamina as him, so we had to stop about every 15 or 20 minutes to rest and to literally breathe. Now, to be fair, Doug said that this was the most difficult version of this hike he had ever experienced. And it was helpful having him as a guide, helping us to choose a path upward on this difficult climb. Now, it's an understatement to say that being at that high elevation and trying to climb was very difficult for me. At one point, I almost bonked and I had to lay down on a rock. So my friend Mary sat on a rock and I used her lap as a pillow. I ate a few grapes, drank some water, and I came back to life. Now, I got better, but for about 2 hours, it was a continual uphill climb. And then we finally reached the top. And what did I find there? Staggering views, of course, views for miles. We could see all the Mammoth Lakes and the surrounding forest from the top. And we were now poised to hike just a little further, and we were going to be at Crystal Lake. And of course, now, and even right when I got to the top, I decided that it was totally worth it. And you can guess that when I reached the top, I was relieved and proud of myself for accomplishing this. I was also thankful for a community of friends who helped one another press to the top. We held on to hope together for what we would experience, and then we made it. And I share this with you because I became capable by the slow and steady process of working out. I was capable of actually achieving this climb because of that. 1 year ago, I would not have been able to do this at all. And on this hike, the only reason I bonked was because of that oxygen situation. But my body was ultimately able to do the physical work of the climb. Now, this was a situation that became something I had not planned for. I thought it was going to be a hike, but it turned out to be a hike. You know what I'm talking about, right? Life is like that, right? You have certain expectations about what a situation could be or should be, and then it takes a surprising left turn. Your ability to cope is tested, and you find yourself on an excruciating uphill climb. And you might see others around you traversing the rocks and incline with ease, and you wonder about yourself for a moment. But you keep plodding along, making your way forward the best you can until you finally make it through. Now, please hear me. I am not saying that all difficulty leads to a tremendous end with a great view. Sometimes life is simply hard, and it doesn't feel timely, necessary, or fair. And I have lived that as well. Today, I'm talking about those situations that are difficult, but not overwhelming completely, the ones that test your mettle. It can be good to see what you're made of. There's a chance to see some progress in your abilities, and you might even gain a little perspective. So let's continue with this idea as we move into our I Can Do That for this week. Let's swing back around to my opening question. Are you now, or have you recently been in a difficult situation? If it's the kind of situation that tests your mettle, here are a few questions you can ponder or journal about. What might perseverance look like at this point? What new capability might show up for you in this season? How are you relying on friendship or community as you make your way? How might you take in the unexpected terrain to discover any new perspectives? It might be difficult to address some of these questions if you're in the middle of difficulty, but if you are looking at one in the rearview mirror, it might be good to take some time for reflection. Allow God to meet you as you craft the narrative of this season. Remember, you're making your way forward one small, simple, and gracious step at a time.